Ukraine recaptures a village in the Luhansk region as Russia loses full control of the disputed eastern area.
As the Italian election approaches, there is little enthusiasm among the crowds, with many more concerned by the energy crisis and inflation.
German idea of not price capping gas imports gains momentum among other EU member states amid rising energy costs.
Moscow has denounced fresh strikes in eastern Ukraine against areas they once controlled, like in Donetsk, where Russian-backed authorities claim that 13 people died. Ukraine's army has recaptured a village close to the eastern city of Lysychansk, in a small but symbolic victory that means Russia no longer has full control of the Luhansk region.
In Kharkiv, we are stabilizing the situation, holding our positions firmly, so strongly that the occupiers are probably panicking. Well, we warned the Russian military in Ukraine has only two options: escape from our land or captivity. The collaborators have similar options. Either they will try to escape, and it remains to be seen whether Russia will let them into its territory, even if they gave their passports, or the collaborators will be convicted under Ukraine's laws.
On Monday, civic chambers in the self-proclaimed republics of Luhansk and Donetsk called on the Russian-backed heads of their regions to hold referendums on joining Russia.
Donbass residents made their choice already in 2014 at the referendum on self-determination of the Luhansk People's Republic. We have been waiting and hoping all these years that the second referendum will definitely come. We'll make our dream of coming back home to Russia true.
Meanwhile, Kiev claims Russian forces have carried out a missile strike that narrowly missed a nuclear power plant in the Mykolaiv region of southern Ukraine. Ukraine's state nuclear power company said 3 reactors at the plant continued to operate and nobody was injured.
Ukrainian forces are continuing to strike Russian military, transportation and logistics assets in the south of the country in the region of Kherson, while the counteroffensive in northeastern part continues, where Ukraine appears to have made a breakthrough in the region of Luhansk. Let's take a look at the latest situation on the ground. The Institute for the Study of War says that Ukrainian forces are likely continuing their limited and localized offensive operations across the Oskil River on the Liman and Bilohorivka line. Now let's take a closer look at Bilohorivka, because the geolocated combat footage confirms that Ukrainian troops have retaken Bilohorivka, which lies at within 20 kilometers to the area of Lysychansk and Severodonetsk. That was the last Ukrainian holdout in Luhansk region that Russia captured on the 3rd of July. And this development now means that Russia no longer has full control of the whole of the region of Luhansk, let alone the region of Donetsk. And yet the Institute for the Study of War says urgent discussion among Russia's proxies for the need for referendum and for Russia to immediately annex Luhansk and Donetsk regions suggest that Ukraine's ongoing counteroffensive is panicking proxy forces and some decision makers in the Kremlin. What is Moscow saying about this? Deputy Chairman of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, said, quote, referendums in the Donbass are essential not only for the systematic protection of residents of these areas and other liberated territories, but also for the restoration of historic justice.
The White House has confirmed the release of American contractor Mike Frericks, who had been held hostage in Afghanistan for over 2 years by the Taliban. His release follows a prisoner exchange deal for a convicted Taliban drug lord jailed in the United States. The swap reflects ongoing efforts on behalf of the Biden administration to bring home US citizens detained overseas.
After more than 2 decades behind bars, an American judge has ordered the release of Adnan Syed, the subject of the hit true crime podcast Serial. In her ruling, she said that the state did not meet its legal obligation to share evidence with Syed's legal team that could have bolstered his defense when he was on trial for the 1999 murder of high school student Ha Min Lee. Prosecutors have 30 days to decide if they want to pursue a new trial or dismiss the case.
There's a mixture of apathy and anxiety felt in the streets of Rome as this weekend's general election approaches. On Sunday, Italians will discover who will be their next prime minister. But there appears to be little enthusiasm among the crowds in the capital. As the country struggles with an energy crisis and soaring inflation, many have lost faith in their politicians.
I have no expectations. I don't know who I can vote for. Everyone promises something, but these promises never materialize. It is very difficult.
We expect them to reduce energy costs, bills, electricity, gas, everything. It is not sustainable. It is difficult to make ends meet with these prices. Food prices, for example, have increased a lot.
I am not optimistic about the election, but I will still go to vote. I will definitely go and do my duty as a citizen. I cannot approach these elections with great hope because, sincerely speaking, we do not have qualified people.
Perché secondo me quelle che mancano sono persone qualificate.
Giorgia Meloni, the leader of the far-right Brothers of Italy party, is expected to win the election. She has been on a mission to reassure the public that she no longer identifies with her post-fascist past and will now follow center-right policies. The left bloc, led by Enrico Letta, claim her party will eventually go back to its extremist ways. But given the bloc's internal divisions and poor showing in the latest polls, the chances the left will emerge victorious on Sunday are looking slim.
Germany is totally against putting a price cap on gas imports. The idea is gaining traction among EU member states as they continue to face rising energy prices. But talking to Euronews, the German minister in charge of European affairs made clear that a price cap would be counterproductive and would scare suppliers.
Well, the issue with the price cap is that if you introduce a price cap as EU unilaterally and all the other consumers around the world don't do it, then the gas will go to other consumers, and thus we might have a shortage in gas supplies or an even lower supply in the EU. So I think we should be very careful with these kind of set price caps.
According to Berlin, the EU should diversify its gas supplies and engage in direct negotiations with gas suppliers to make sure it gets the lowest prices possible.
Indeed, I think it would be important to discuss with individual gas suppliers such as Norway about ways to reduce the price here as well, because they have a big interest also in the European Union and the European market flourishing.
The German minister also defended the package of measures submitted by the European Commission last week, which included a reduction in EU electricity demand and a windfall tax on the profits of energy companies.
The windfall profits of energy companies is much needed so that we can use those surpluses that are not justified by any extra effort that companies have made, but just by the way the energy market is structured, that we can use those surpluses and give it back to the consumers, to citizens, particularly those in need, so that we reduce the prices for them.
Discussions are currently underway to consider getting rid of the voting rule, which means all 27 EU member states must agree on an issue when it comes to foreign and security policy. The German minister also says this should be done as soon as possible and before the EU lets in any new members. Chris Pitchers, Euronews, Brussels.
The 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly is well underway here in New York with the backdrop of the war in Ukraine and mounting economic and environmental crises. World leaders meet for the first time in person, with the exception of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who will address the UN General Assembly virtually. The effect of rising food prices on the world's most vulnerable communities, the energy crisis, and climate disparities, including the recent devastating flood in Pakistan, will all be on the agenda this week. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will deliver his speech on Wednesday. And according to his spokesperson, quote, there will be no sugarcoating in his remarks, but he will outline reasons for hope. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for Euronews.